The quicker you learn how to think, speak, and write, the greater the profits you will generate. And this has been true across millennia because the people who can think, they can influence, who can write, they can influence, who can speak, they of course can influence. And in today's economy, influence matters more than anything else. Because if you can speak well, if you can communicate well, you are able to move mountains. And the question is how to do that. So, first, on the note of thinking, what you should do is you should not only look at what is happening around you, you should also look at how and why. So there's a certain framework which I use is called as a wow framework. Why, operations, and what. So always start with why. That is why something is happening here. Always look at interest or influences that impacts the operations so that what you're seeing the what can be justified. And here's in politics it is about narrative. Also in business it is also about narrative. So you must be able to think well enough to deconstruct the narrative. And the framework which you can use is op- why, operations, and what. The wow framework. Operations is essentially the how of what is happening, and the what and how you can understand by reading books, you can understand by reading newspapers, magazines, looking at online videos. But if you're looking at the why of the stuff, then you must be able to reflect whether the justification the author is saying or the people are saying is actually relevant to the question in discussion or the topic of discussion. So now the second thing, the writing thing. Well, if you can write well, writing is a form of thinking. So if you can write well, you can you it shows that you can think well. And when you can do that spontaneously, that's what speaking is. So you for example, you must have heard about this topic of ideas. Ideas are cheap. Ideas are not cheap. Execution is cheap because and people will disagree to this, but my contrarian take is that you can train anyone to execute well, but you cannot train anyone to think well. What you can do is just let them deconstruct their own thoughts and align their own thoughts in a manner which people can understand. But the richness of ideas, you cannot train for that. That is intrinsic to the human being, that is intrinsic to the individual's experience. But you can train them, and you can do it very well to have them execute a particular skill very efficiently. But you cannot train them to think efficiently. You can do that, but to generate ideas from that, it is very hard to do that. So it is very hard to ingrain the capacity of creative thought. That's why ideas are the building block of economy. And in today's knowledge economies, ideas are not cheap. Ideas are very, very, very influential. So look at ideas as not cheap but as influential building blocks, and look at the how, again the wow framework we will adopt here, and look at how you can implement that in the current world. And for that you have to understand the systems which you are living in. So in Indian economy, for example, it is just not about the system of businesses, how business is made, how companies are formed, how branding is formed. You have to look at a much more holistic manner, how policies, how human behavior shapes the particular brand, how human behavior shapes the particular economical decisions that businesses are making. And for that, you have to ingrain yourself in human psychology. So if you have a rich understanding of human psychology, you will of course have a rich understanding of how businesses execute in the real world environment, because in the end of the day, it is people who are working for people. So now coming back to speaking as our last topic. So for speaking, as I have trained multiple individuals in speaking when I was around in my teenage, they were, some of them were IT graduates, some of them were professionals, and my takeaway for them was that think of speaking as refined thinking. So if you have prepared well before, that's one way of speaking. So you know the facts, you know the figures, but the cohesion of narrative, that is the ability to communicate well in a fluent manner, that comes from writing. So the better your writing skills are, the better your speaking skills will be, because you are training the thought, you are training the muscle of thinking, and you are generating a coherent narrative spontaneously. And because writing is the process where what you are speaking to yourself is is an output or is an input to your hand of what you are writing outside. So if your thoughts are well, you will speak well. So the only way to practice that would be daily practice, or listening, having a broad base of knowledge, and then compressing that in writing, and then training your thinking muscle to spontaneously do that while you are speaking. So that's where the influence comes from. And confidence is built when your thinking, writing, and speaking are aligned. So what you think is how you write, and how you write is how you speak. And you must have had that experience in your own life. So to summarize, in order to think well or write well or speak well, you must treat ideas not as cheap, but as something you can work with, something you can generate, something you can train yourself and understand the capacity of your own thought generation or idea generation and harbor that capacity, hone that capacity. Because in the today's world, in today's Indian system, the ideas are killed very rapidly. And the only way you can escape that is by preserving your own experience and then working around and then letting that experience shape your thoughts rather than be indoctrinated into a system that helps you eradicate those thoughts and hone you in a manner which you don't want. So I hope this helps.